In this video, we're going to be discussing mat work. We're going to show you how to teach your dog to target his mat and to stay in place until he is released. So the first step is to choose a mat that you will use, and you want to only set it down whenever you are going to be doing training. Set it down and click and treat the dog for their initial interest and investigation in the mat. After the dog has collected a treat from the mat, you can then click because her head will still be oriented toward the mat. So you can click and treat that interest. You can then move to keeping all four paws on the mat like Claire is doing here. Claire is actually a dog who we picked up from the APL. She was available for adoption, so we weren't sure exactly how much training she had and what she knew. So at this point, we're just rewarding her for keeping the four paws on the mat. At one point here, I tried to lure her back into position, and she takes that as a down cue and offers us a down, so we're happy to take that. We go ahead and reward her heavily. She just got a nice pile of treats for offering that down. If your dog is not so quick to move into a down, no problem. Just reward the four paws. Here, what I did was encourage her off the mat and then waited for her to put herself back on the mat with all four paws before treating her for that. I also went ahead and lured her back into that down since this is a behavior that she seems to have under her belt. So in these initial stages, we're essentially teaching the dog that being on the mat is really fun and being off the mat is really boring. So I encourage her off and ignore her. I'm trying not to even make eye contact with her. I'm also not giving her any clues about what I want her to do because I want her to suss this out on her own. And here, as you can see, she decides to try putting herself back on the mat, and we let her know that that was a good decision. So at this point, we have shifted to only rewarding Claire whenever she goes into a down on the mat. We're not luring this, as you can see. We're waiting for her to make this decision on her own, and we're giving her several treats to let her know that that was the correct decision. We then encourage her off of the mat and ignore her when she's not on the mat, and simply wait her out. This can require some patience, but we want for her at this point to be thinking about what is earning her reinforcement and reducing the amount of prompts or clues that we give her. Here she tries something else. She tries it down, but it's not on the mat. So we give her a little help just by moving around to reset her and then waiting for her to, again, make the correct choice, which is a down on the mat. We then stick at this level until immediately after being encouraged off the mat, she puts herself right back on and immediately goes into a down, as she does right here.
Kind of like that.
At this point, you can add the cue, which is go to your mat and then point. We wanted to wait to add the cue until she was reliably putting herself on the mat from about 3 feet of distance. The reason that we are waiting is because we want to make sure that when we give that cue, she does the behavior. Otherwise, we have a misassociation between the cue and the behavior and ultimately the consequence, which is food reinforcement. At this point, we are looking to build some stay on the mat. So what we are doing is after she puts herself on the mat and goes into a down, we're cueing a stay, taking one step back, and then immediately coming back and rewarding her. And then we gradually increase the number of steps.
Work it, stay.
Next, we're going to start incorporating some distractions. So we're walking the distance and then jingling the doorknob, which for many dogs can be a cue for them to break. We then gradually make it harder, first by opening the door just slightly, then by opening the door all the way. And she is doing really, really well with holding it. Every time she holds her down, we return and reward. This time we go to open the door and remove ourselves and she breaks. Totally to be expected. If your dog does this, you want to just encourage him or her back onto the mat and do not reward that down. Otherwise the dog can learn the chain of, oh, I just break my stay, then you reset me, then I get a treat. And then try again, possibly making it a little bit easier for the dog if they have failed consistently at that level. You can then simulate the arrival of a visitor by recruiting a helper to stand on the other side of a door, cueing your dog into a down, going and opening the door and allowing the visitor in. If your dog holds the downstay throughout the entire sequence until he or she is released, the dog gets to greet the visitor.